Well, I've got my mechanism plate all lubricated with graphite powder. I'm very pleased with that. I've just unhooked the spring, swung that arm out into the blade's open position, and I'll put my shutter blades back in place. I start here. Now these shutter blades cleaned up very well. I didn't have to polish them. But the cotton buds came off quite dirty, so there was obviously a lot of contaminants on the surface of the blades. Oh, there's my 5 blades in position. I'm going to put the case on to get this the right way round. There, I think. No, around here. That's better. The 3 case screws in. And as usual, run the screws down very lightly, don't do them up tight at this stage. There's always a possibility that the blades, a blade or blades may have been knocked out of position when you're getting the case over the top, in which case you could damage something if you would just tighten the screws up on a blade that's not sitting correctly in position. Just check that that's okay. Now they swing neatly into position. I'll put their return spring in place. That's fine. I can go back now, tighten those 3 case screws. Flip it over, check again that the blades move freely. They do. And they're nice and clean. They've cleaned up well. So, just remains to put the other components back in the shutter. The retard gear train is all clean and working correctly. I'll start cleaning up these other components. I think I can start with the flash contact really. The flash contact just wedges down into the shutter case and screws to the mechanism plate. That's better. Some of them go in easier than others. They're usually not as don't usually put up as much fight as that. That's our flash contact in place. The B lever next, I think, and its retaining screw. Its retaining screw has a shoulder which locates the B lever, and the B lever pivots around that shoulder. So I'll just clean this. When running this screw in, it's always take care that the lever is free to run around the shoulder of the screw and is not trapped underneath the shoulder of the screw, otherwise it won't move correctly. That's good. That's working fine. We've got the catch that holds the shutter in the cocked position. This has a post on the bottom of it that fits into this hole on the mechanism plate. Now the hole on the mechanism plate is right on the side of a machined away section, so it's not always easy to get that to fall into place correctly. That's it. Only a modest amount of fighting. Check that moves. Now the spring on this hooks behind the B lever. Normally this lever is in this position. That's got tension on that B lever at that point. That's good. So the 500th of a second or high speed shutter spring, I'll just give it a little wipe with molybdenum paste, and the lever that provides our return spring for the shutter release has to fit onto that post, and the spring needs to tuck down in the side of the case. There's a wee groove down there. Do it, it's seated, yes. The shutter release lever. Well, there's not much to this. Fits on here, couples to this lever here, which gives it its return spring. This is the latch lever, and you can see how when that's latched in and the shutter release opens, it pushes that down and releases the action. So the main lever, as this part's called, you better clean that. So I'll just clean all this with some naphtha, get rid of all old sticky grease and various other problems, dust, stuff of that nature. That all looks good. Right, so some molybdenum paste. On the shutter itself, what am I interested in? Well, this surface here is where the main lever swings the blade, the retard gear train across, so I wanted that surface. Put some molybdenum paste on there, on here, here, that'll do. And the blade actuating ring itself, or no, the main lever, inside surface, outside surface. Now on the bird paw at the tip, and on this little lever here where it tracks the track down here, the return track, that should do it. So let's get this main lever in position. Slide that down there, swing the B lever out of the way. Drop that down into place, get that catch back out of the way, hook the spring over its post, check that that moves, it does. That should be good. I've got to clean the shutter speed cam plate. Now this is just a bit of dust and dirty marks on here. There's not a lot of old lubricant or anything. That's quite good. Molybdenum paste around the inside surface, that's where it runs around the lens tube, and if that's doesn't have any lubricant, then changing the shutter speeds will be unusually stiff. The track that the high-speed spring runs on, it runs under here. So I'll get that, a bit of lubricant there, and that's it. That can go into place. Make sure that the B lever is not trapped underneath that edge where it currently is. There we go. So that should be B. That works fine. This should be a 1 second or close to it. That's fine. This should be something like a 10th. This should be a 25th. I think that's our speed range on here, isn't it? Yeah, that all seems pretty reasonable. I'm going to clean the front plate, put it on, and then check this on my shutter speed tester and come back, assuming it's fine. We'll close everything up, put the lens back in, and put this back on the camera body. Where are we? We want to be here. Rotate that there until the lock's lined up. I should go away and get the right screwdriver for that, but I'll do it with my tweezers instead. Certainly seems good. I'll test that and I'll report back. Alright, we've got to get the shutter back in place, making sure the arm on the shutter drops into the loop on the shutter release arm on the camera body. Fit the retaining ring in place from the back. Taking the tool, run that ring up, it's nearly tight. Now we've got to get this aligned correctly, and basically we're aligning the infinity mark here with that little black diamond. That's where it needs to be. So now I've got to hold the shutter firmly and do up the retaining ring without shifting anything, which is awkward. That's pretty good. Now the check to make sure that it's done up tight enough is to set your shutter speed to a 500 and then go to set the shutter speed where you're working against that hard spring, and if the shutter doesn't shift you're probably okay. Right, let's fire that, release that shutter. That's good. You notice the shutter release popped back up nicely, as it did not before we started. So that looks to me like that job's pretty much complete, bar the tidying up. So I will just give that retainer ring a little bit more tightening. Check that I didn't move anything I shouldn't have moved. No, that feels good. And the outside of the camera can be cleaned up. Now basically there's nothing left to do here now, but treat this leather a little bit to give it a bit more colour, like the back, because the back's nice now. We just want the rest of it to match, so I'll do that. So there we have it, a nice Kodak Retina II type 014, back and ready for action. As you probably recall, when it came in, the front was jammed, wouldn't open or close. The leather on the back was very grey and miserable looking. The front didn't look much better. The lens was quite hazy. That's quite good now. Focus is nice and smooth. That was pretty dry and horrible. Everything else is working nicely. The shutter release pops back up, no problem at all, so no problems there. Rangefinder's all clean, correctly working, and this one can go back to its owner. So, thanks for watching.